Borrowers with student loans nationwide are preparing to resume paying their monthly payments. You'll remember the Supreme Court struck down President Biden's plan last month to forgive thousands of dollars of debt, saying it was unconstitutional. The liberal justices who opposed the decision argued their colleagues overstepped, and the court had no right striking down the plan. Interest on student loans will now resume in September, with payments starting back up in October. Now, here to make sense of all of the changes is Betsy Mayotte, the president of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. She's here to answer any of your questions you might have about student loans. Just text them to us. The number on your screen right there, 336-379-5775, and we will get them answered live on the air. Betsy, thanks so much for joining us. First, let's start with how we got here. So we know that the Supreme Court struck down the president's relief plan, but I think some people are wondering why there aren't any more pauses on repaying those loans.
Yeah, so most federal student loans have enjoyed a pause and a 0% interest rate for 3.5 years. There's really two reasons why it wasn't extended. One, President Biden doesn't have the authority to do it. The authority that he had to pause payments and interest was given under the HEROES Act, which only allows the president to do something contrary to federal law in situations of national emergency. And the COVID emergency is over. But the other reason was because as part of the debt ceiling negotiations, he promised not to do it anymore.
Got it. Okay. So for people who have student loans who haven't been paying them because it's been on pause, when can they expect to have to start paying their next payment, and when should the interest start accruing again?
So the Department of Education has confirmed that interest will begin accruing on those loans that were enjoying the pause on September 1st. And that borrowers can expect their first payment to be due sometime in October.
And a lot of people probably wondering, how do you prepare to restart some of these payments? It's been years for some people who haven't had to pay on their loans.
Exactly. And we're in a different economic situation. I mean, things like eggs and lettuce cost a lot more than they did when the pause started. The other thing that's happened that borrowers need to be aware of is something like 17 million student loans have changed servicers over the past 3.5 years. So the first thing borrowers need to do is make sure they know where their loans are. Thankfully, that's super easy to do. They just need to log into the Department of Education's website, which is studentaid.gov.
So some people have been on those automatic ACH payments before COVID. Do those automatically start again, or would the borrowers have to do something to make that happen?
That's a really good question, because when the first pause was put into place, which we thought was only going to be 3 months, borrowers were advised that if they were on ACH, it would automatically start back up again. Well, we went from 3 months to 3.5 years. So it's clearly not a good idea. Automatically turning people's ACH on after 3.5 years is just fraught with peril. So borrowers will have to, if they want to go back to automatic payments, they will need to work with their servicer to sign back up for that.
When it comes to the repayment options, I think everybody who has student loans have been getting emails about different ways to repay now that the payment will start up again. What are some of those different options that people have?
So under the federal student loan program, we're very lucky because there's quite a few different repayment options. There's multiple lower payment options. There's some that are will give you an interest-only payment for a couple years and then gradually increase it. There's some that lower the payment by extending the term of the loan, which you can also do via consolidation. But the payment plans that are getting the most attention right now are what we as an umbrella call the income-driven repayment plans. There's 5 of them, and they're all exactly the same except where they're different. But essentially what they do is they base the payment on your income and family size. And if you're on that payment plan for 20 or 25 years, depending on the plan and what kind of loans you have, and you still have a balance after all that time, they will forgive the balance. That's what those plans have in common.
Interesting. Is this something that's new? Because I had never heard of that.
Well, what's old is new again. Now, this is going to show how long I've been in the student loan industry, but the very first income-driven repayment plan actually came into existence in 1994. But very few people used it, mostly because sometimes it worked out to be more expensive than their regular monthly payment. But since 2009, the various administrations have brought on 4 more income-driven repayment options that have all become gradually more generous. The most generous being the one that was announced on June 30th after the disappointing SCOTUS decision. And that plan is being called the SAVE plan.
Okay. You had mentioned that it's been 3 years now, so a lot has changed with regards to who holds your loan and that kind of stuff. So how do you even start going about figuring out who now has the loan, and then also how do you start making those repayments?
Yeah, so the way to find out who's holding your loan is to log into the Department of Education's website, which again is studentaid.gov. From there, you should go and either create an account if you don't already have one, or log in, go find the password to your old account at the loan servicer, and make sure your contact information is up to date, because you're going to be getting a lot of notifications, and it's really important you don't miss any important deadlines. From there, look at what your payment's going to be come October, and if it's not something that you can afford to make, then you should start reading all the things. There's all kinds of information on that student aid site. We also have a lot of plain English information about the different plans on our website, which is freestudentloanadvice.org. And both of those places have really cool calculators where you can just punch your information in once, your income, your loans, etc., and it will tell you what your payment will be under all the plans, and more importantly, how much that would cost you over time.
I think a lot of people who were really hoping that their loan would be forgiven are kind of holding out hope that something could happen, something could change last minute where that would go into place. But is that realistic to think that way anymore?
It's not out of the realm of possibility. June 30th was a busy day. We got the disappointing SCOTUS decision. We got the announcement of the new SAVE plan, which people are really excited about. And President Biden also said he wasn't giving up on broad student loan forgiveness. This time they're going through a process called negotiated rulemaking. And we actually just had the public hearing for that this past Tuesday. Negotiated rulemaking is the way that usually regulations are changed through the Department of Education. The process takes about a year. And what they do is they form committees and try to work out what the best regulation would look like, as long as it sort of doesn't violate anything in federal law. Those of you that might remember Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's been sort of shouting for a long time that President Biden did have the authority under the Higher Education Act to do broad student loan forgiveness, that's sort of the path they're taking this time.
Okay.